Wavect, the web3 software company that understands what you want.
Hi everyone, welcome at Wavect. Today with Jen Greyson, who is the advisory board member of Kerala Blockchain Academy. She also co-founded CryptocurrenSHE and is keynote speaker and author of more than 60 books. She also founded several other companies, and today we talk about a super exciting topic, and that is how to build successful Web3 businesses. So thank you, Jen, for being here and taking the time. Really appreciate it. And starting out, I would like to give you the opportunity to let us know whatever you want. What are your passions? What are you currently working on? Maybe a new book. Would be super curious about that as well. And yeah, what are you up to?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I am, I've got a lot of things in the hopper right now. I just started lecturing at a college. I have 2 college courses that I'm teaching on the weekends that are fundamentals of blockchain. And so that's been really exciting to start really talking mainstream. I've been in the echo chamber of crypto since 2017. So talking to crypto people about crypto is one thing, but getting to talk to new people that are just now getting exposed to it is really different for me. I've done a lot of speaking engagements this year where people don't even know what Web3 is, which a lot of us didn't. I didn't even know there was a Web3, that we were in Web2. I was like, wait, what happened? When were we in Web2? So it's fun for me to get to talk to new people that have never heard about it. So that's been really exciting. In that same vein, I'm doing a new series of books, kind of marrying up the books that I've been writing and my love of crypto and blockchain. And I'm going to do one series called Blockchain for Businesses. And so it will really focus on, like, what do marketers need to know about blockchain and why do they care, and journalists and attorneys and accountants, and really starting to take this out of this beautiful ecosystem that we all love and thrive in, that is Web3 and crypto, and taking it to the masses, because we all talk about adoption, and I kept waiting for someone else to educate everyone, and I realized I was who I'd been waiting for. So I'm really, this last year, I've gotten really heavily involved in the educational piece of blockchain and crypto. Currently mentoring a humongous company, actually. We're raising a bunch of money for them. They've partnered with Microsoft and LinkedIn, and we're going to do digital diplomas with them. Their company is Rare Goods, and so we're really excited about what they're doing within the university ecosystem. Nothing sexy necessarily. I mean, it's not monkey JPEGs, but real world use applications of creating living digital diplomas. And so I'm excited to be an advisor on that project. And Microsoft and LinkedIn are obviously really excited about it. So that should be really exciting. So I'm passionate about everything. Like, I don't have a short answer. Is it blockchain and crypto related? Yes, I'm passionate about it. So it's all good stuff.
Wow, love that answer. Super interesting. Yeah, basically because you talked a lot about education, diplomas, adoption right now, I just want to drop that question in because it's usually quite interesting to know what people think. What is, in your opinion, actual adoption of blockchain or crypto? What does that mean?
Like what does adoption mean to me?
Like, what does...
Or what would that look like?
For example, yeah, exactly.
So to me, I think it's 2 things, right? I think if we compare it to our transition into the internet and email, adoption was people just open up an email and they just use it. They don't have to know what the tech is behind it. Or when we look at mobile phone adoption, it was just people just open up their phones and they just use them. They don't know what the tech is behind it. They don't know that it's pinging off of network towers, or, what was 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, right? It's the same thing, Web 2 to Web 3. And so those of us, I think, that are in the industry get really hung up on these words, and let's call it something. Let's not call it a smart contract. Let's call it an NFT. Let's make it even more confusing for the user. And so when you have developers developing for developers, we get really hung up on the geeky tech part of it because that's what we love. Instead of thinking about our end user, that is, I want somebody to get a verified blue check on LinkedIn and have no idea that the reason they can now put Harvard on their LinkedIn profile is because a bunch of blockchain is working in the background. And so to me, adoption is users just using it and not really knowing what the tech is. If we're doing our job as developers and as business owners of blockchain companies, our end users should have no idea they're using blockchain. So that to me is the ultimate adoption, that you cannot see the technology. And I think right now we're not even remotely close to that. We are a little bit. We're seeing it with like Starbucks loyalty program. When they just did their new press release about it, those of us in the know knew that blockchain was going to be underlaying that, but a Starbucks regular purchaser doesn't know that's what's going to be running Starbucks's new loyalty program. As we talk about digital collectibles going forward, no one's going to need to know that there's an NFT or a smart contract managing the digital ownership of that. So to me, adoption is when the tech becomes invisible.
Love it. Yeah, basically blockchain is a tool and not a marketing campaign. It's not a business model. It's basically just a tool that helps you to achieve more value for your customers or your community.
Exactly. And for you to save money on your bottom line as a company, because you're cutting out the gooey middle of all of these things that have to happen right now in Web 2 with paper processing or middleman or mediation, like all the stuff that happens in the middle. So yes, I think that's where we get to educate companies. And this is why I'm doing the books, which is, why do you as an accountant care about this new technology? They're like, I don't need a monkey JPEG. No, you do not. But what you do need is this, and this is why it's going to save you money. So yeah, you're exactly right in your definition of that.
Yeah, especially as an accountant, you might need to deal with it anyway, right?
Could you imagine how much time they could take off? They'd be like, oh my gosh, I work one day a year. And it's not even April 14th, and I just get to I push buttons, people upload stuff, it gets verified on the blockchain, I go fish, and then I come back, and then I go to Disneyland, and then I find some more clients. As an accountant, man, blockchain and we see it, right? We see a lot of cool companies. There's one based here in Utah where I'm at that's I think they're a unicorn now. It's called TaxBit, and that's exactly what they're doing. Lots of accounting for crypto companies, and they're doing a bunch of accounting on the blockchain, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see this technology being used in real use case scenarios. It's so fantastic. For me, it's not sexy, but I love it.
A business case doesn't have to be sexy, I think.
Right? Yeah, no, then but people are like you said, the marketing campaigns are like, well, accounting is boring. And I'm like, yes, but look at the tech.
Yeah, well, last year you could have just dropped the term Web3 blockchain or smart contracts, and people would throw money at you anyway, right? So, yeah.
Much more challenging to raise money because now you have to have an actual use case, and now you have to actually educate your investors, which is what we're up against with this company that I'm mentoring, and having to teach founders about what do investors want and what do they look for. And if you can get in during a hype bubble, it's really easy to raise money. But now those same funders, those same founders who raised money now are in a whole new challenge with their investors, because their investors are like, so
Yeah, 100%. Are you still there, Jen? Well,
a big challenge also, which is what do you say to an investor when the Web3 environment changes?
yeah, well, if I understood your your answer correctly, because you got cut off for a second. In general, your answer was if you,
biggest thing, we're all going to make millions,
yeah,
and now you're having to have a very, very real conversation with an investor, which is, no, we need you to follow on. We need to do a follow-on round. But this is why we still have value on your assets. So it's just like, it's a shift in conversation. And so founders are probably having really challenging conversations with their investors right now. Easy to raise, but then what do you do? And so I think that's one thing that founders forget or don't realize is, one, you're always raising money. And two, your relationship with an investor is ongoing, well beyond the raise, and especially when the market drops out. And that's regardless of whether your market is NFTs or crypto or blockchain. Every market changes. I mean, we're in a recession regardless right now. And so I think founders have to really remember that the raise isn't just when you get that first check. That relationship is ongoing. And, what did that money cost you from a partnership perspective too? Did you just take money from somebody because they were giving it to you and everybody wanted monkey JPEGs? And now you're realizing that maybe the person who wrote you the check isn't somebody you want to be partnered with, and now you want a divorce. And so these are all things that are really hard to remember as a founder when money's flying off the shelves and you want a piece of it. And it's hard, right? Like, I mean, it's just like the rules that we make with crypto when we're buying and selling on exchanges, or not buying and selling on exchanges. I have exchange on the brain because of FTX, but you have to set rules, and that goes whether you're buying and selling crypto or whether you're taking on an investor. What are the rules? What are the goals? What's your investment strategy? What's your exit strategy? And I think that's hard for founders to think through and put to paper when, money's growing on trees, like we saw went through the NFT craze.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's just my humble opinion. In general, I think the mindset of just raising money all over again is the wrong mindset in general, right? As a business owner, you want to build a sustainable business, hopefully, right? And not rely on the, let's say, idea to raise new money, fresh money all over again until some kind of miracle happens, right? You always have to work on your business to actually build a business case that works without raising further money. And
Yes.
that's possibly the issue that goes along with that. And yeah, fully agree with everything you said. What I found super interesting is you talked about basically stakeholder management, as some people say, if that's the correct term, right? You have to keep the relationship on a good basis with your investors. What is your experience with that? Like when talking about retaining a relationship with an investor, how does that usually work? What are some recommendations that you know from your own experience? Is it like just updating them on a regular basis? Is it regular meetings? Like if they're team members, does it depend on the agreements you have? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think it can be a lot of different things. I think with any relationship, well, one, I think everybody has to understand that it's a deep relationship. This is a partnership. And so just like with any other partnership and relationship, what is everyone's understanding of that relationship? Are the investors going to be really involved on a day-to-day basis? Are they sitting on your board? Are they part owners? Are they you know, planning on being involved? Did you get involved with them because of their expertise in a certain area? And are you willing to let them have opinions about areas that they're not an expert in? And so when we really look at who to put a company in front of, we really want to marry them up with the right investor over just one that's writing checks. And sometimes that's a family office over a venture capital firm. And looking at who else does the investor have in their ecosystem, and what are the expectations, and revisiting those expectations. And so I think it's always about establishing that up front. What do the communication expectations look like? What role do the investors want to play? Are the founders okay with that? What does that look like as you scale and grow? And how often are we going to revisit this conversation? I mean, it's just like a marriage, and really having to sit down and say, okay, it's our anniversary. Do we want to renew the lease on this marriage? And really being able to have ongoing conversations. Some investors and VCs may not want thorough updates, or they might not want to be on the phone 2 hours a week because they have a bunch of other projects that they're working on. And so I think the important part is no two relationships look the same. And so have a conversation with investors. And for us, like right now, we're looking at doing a lot more family office relationships versus the grip it and rip it of venture capital, because we know, like for any of my blockchain companies, we're going into winter. And so I want a partner who's going to be okay with, we're going to build right now, and we're going to build out tech, we're going to build out clients, we're going to build out the big the moat that we have, and we know what challenges we're up against on client acquisition. We know where things are going to get a little more expensive because it's winter. We've been through these cycles before, and so I need a partner who understands that and isn't going to be frustrated with when an earnings call reflects that we're deep in crypto winter right now. And so I think it's about partnering with the right person in the beginning, especially with Web3 and blockchain companies, knowing about crypto winter cycles and being able to navigate when something like the current FTX debacle happens, and you see that reflected in the market, and you see that reflected on the fear and greed index, And you see that reflected in your client acquisition and your client retention. And what do you do in that situation? And do you have an investor who trusts you enough to say, okay, we got to go put out some fires for a minute. So we're handling everything, but we need you to give us the latitude and not panic. And so I think it's just this ongoing conversation of, what do you want our relationship to look like? And I think that really is on a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the main point that I get from you right now is aligning expectations, keep the conversation up, basically to that extent that both parties agreed upon or are, let's say, satisfied with or happy with. And be sure to get the right people on board, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, those are great takeaways. Absolutely.
Awesome. So for me, as a follow-up question right now, when you talk about the bear market, there are many people that basically maybe just entered the space or have entered the space last year and now want to build or start their own web3 or blockchain business. Do you think that, put aside that they're good or bad founders, but just from a purely market or, let's say, startup perspective, does it make sense to launch in a bear market? Or do you think...
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I think bear markets are some of the best markets to build in, because all the tourists have left. And I, every time, when I started our predictive AI blockchain company, which was my first baptism by fire into the blockchain space, I took over as CEO in July of 2017. We tried to figure out SEC and regulations all throughout the fall of 17. There was the ICO banana pants, and then we had 2018, and then we entered a bear market. And once you get out of that bull cycle that is just this influx of people, new projects, you see the good stuff stay and the good people stay and they build. And so now, to me, is the best time to start one, because nobody knows what you're doing. No, there's no noise right now. And so you can just build your thing quietly. You can test. There's no pressure. You can build out the best thing that the world has ever seen, and you can be ready to launch so that when the bull market hits, you are 7 steps ahead of your competition. You can watch what's happening. The NFT thing was wild.
Yeah.
But we saw OpenSea, right, ready to pick it up because they built in the bear market. And so OpenSea was ready. They weren't scrambling to meet the demand. They were ready because they'd been building. They'd been building through a pandemic. You've got devs that have a lot of time on their hands because their projects maybe went away or couldn't raise, or their own projects can't get funded right now. And so you have people that are willing to build with you on the hopes that in 3 or 4 years it'll come back. And so you can build teams that are willing to go the distance with you. And man, if you can build in a bear market, you can handle anything. So I really do think it's a great time to build, because there's no pressure, and you can make mistakes quietly without everybody looking, and you're not losing everybody else's money. So I I really do think, um, I think they're great times to build. They really are. And we know what the cycle looks like. I mean, we know you've got 3 years at a minimum. So get it done. And what I say to founders and myself every morning in the mirror, I'm like, okay, if I could have come out of last year's cycle, what's the one thing I wish I'd have done 3 years ago? Do that. And so I looked at that and went, man, I wish I'd have educated more. I wish I'd have written more books. I wish I'd have had a better podcast. So that's what I'm doing. And so that's kind of when I look at founders and say, what do you wish you'd have done 3 years ago? When NFTs went bananas, what do you wish you'd have done? Go do that. We're still so early in the game, and I think it's hard for us to remember that. There are so many people that still have no idea what in the world we're doing over here. So we're still so early. And if anything, the last 5 weeks has set us back even more. So I think the fear index is
Well.
and so if we look at that, it's even, what do you wish you'd have done 6 years ago? This is like the ultimate do-over that everybody has right now.
Yeah, 100%. If you see an opportunity,
or a long answer to a short question, but yes.
Fully agree. Love that answer. If you see an opportunity, well, you should always go for it, right? Usually you only regret things that you didn't do, right? That reminds me basically of that. So really love it. You talked a lot about building quietly right now. When we think about regular startups, they get told the exact opposite, interestingly. Like, go out, even before you build, validate your business case. And what is your take on that? How do you compare these two sectors and how they approach product development?
Well, first, I think you're going to get told a different thing by everybody you sit in front of. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest dilemmas I see founders face is when they're trying to raise or they're going through an accelerator, everybody has an opinion of how they should run their company. And if they put a deck in front of 10 different people, they're going to get 10 different responses to what they need to do. And I think they're all viable avenues. And so it depends on what you're building. I think as a founder, if you're solving your own pain point, which is, I know this frustrates me and I know I can build a solution to it, then you already know who your user is. If you're an outsider and you're like, I'll bet accountants would love to go fishing more often and I'm going to build a thing for them, and you don't know who your user is, then yeah, you should go out and spend some time with accountants. If you don't know what the market wants, you need to go out and figure that out. But I think founders spend a lot of time trying to make everybody else happy. And they do it because they are trying to get funded. And so they pivot and they pivot and they pivot and they pivot. And all they end up doing is drilling a hole around instead of actually getting any forward movement. Do I think you should do your homework before you build? Absolutely. Do I think you should spend time building a prototype? I don't know. I mean, there's and these are mistakes I made. You know, we spent $5,000 building a prototype that no investor ever asked us for. And we finally got tired of trying to raise money. And so we were like, okay, how do we just get clients? And so I think it comes back to, if you couldn't raise money, what would you do? If raising money wasn't an option and you just had to go build a business, what would you do? Go build a thing and go find clients and charge them money. Like, that's just build a business. And then if you have a business that's ready to scale and you already have users because you built a thing, that makes it easier to raise money. But investors also aren't wrong in saying, well, who's your target market and how is this going to work? It doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. We have to educate investors. A lot of them, especially with blockchain, they call me. They call me and say, hey, Jen, will you look at this blockchain company and tell me what it does and if we should invest in it? And then I pick it apart. But, you know, they're getting better and they're getting smarter and they're starting to understand it more. But don't assume that an investor knows your business better than you. Go build it and find clients. So I think there's a lot of schools of thought. And, you know, I think you also have to look at why an accelerator or an investor is telling you that thing. Is it because they want to 10x their money and get a bunch of stuff coming back? You know, so it depends is the answer.
Mm-hmm. I really love that answer, to be honest, because actually it just shows again, you should always keep the original idea of a business in mind, right? Build a business that works. And, well, raising money should just accelerate things, especially in the digital sector, right? Oftentimes you don't need right off the start to get your first minimal customer like millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars, because a minimal product can already generate a customer. For sure, it always depends, but most of the time that might be possible, and that's super exciting. Since that I know that you have built several companies in your life, are there some mistakes that you encountered yourself later in the journey? Right? Many people talk about what you can do wrong when you just start out, when you build your first couple of businesses. But what kind of things have you learned for yourself after raising X, after scaling to Y? I don't know. What are some mistakes that you have learned yourself, or I don't know?
So I think one of the biggest ones was not putting scalable practices into place in the beginning. And as a founder in the beginning, I think one of the, at least for me, like, I was used to doing everything myself and being scrappy and doing everything I possibly could on the smallest amount of money and putting in 14 hours a day and really being able to just get it done. And that ends up just not being scalable. And so as you grow, then you get your first round or your second round, you realize that now you've got to bring on more people. You have to learn to delegate. You have to learn how to replicate yourself. And so I think not putting scalable systems into place from the get-go becomes really costly as you grow, because it is really impactful, because now you're having to do it as you're moving rapidly. And so for us, that got really costly. And I wish I'd have taken the time in the very beginning to create systems and acting as if we already had 10,000 users, or acting as if we already had 100,000 users, and saying, okay, if we had to manage that, what would that system look like? And what can we put in place today that we don't have to pivot when we're down the road? And there are always things on day one that we could do. And um, my business partner was mentoring a company the other day, and they knew what their exit strategy was from day one. They were like, okay, we're going to go in. We only want to hold this for 3 years. We know what our exit strategy is. And it was like, okay, then every decision we make every single day, we're holding it against that bar of, if someone's coming in to purchase this and we know we want to be an acquisition 3 years from now, what is that acquiring company going to say about this decision that we're making today? And it really refined those decisions. And so I think going in as a startup, it's not just, oh, we're going to grow to be this great big thing. It's also including, what's our exit strategy and what are we measuring every decision against? And is it, we want to have, success to us means 10,000 users. Okay, then is the decision I'm making right now a decision I would make if we had 10,000 users? Yes or no? Why? And then really saying, well, because I don't have, 100 grand in the bank, so it's got to be this way. Okay, that's a good enough reason. When do we make the transition? And so really thinking about that scalability, because it's going to cost you, you can only kick stuff down the road so long. And then you're having to move the ship when you're really big and you have 10,000 users, where one decision might have cost you $500 that you didn't have. But putting that system into place or spending those 3 days in the beginning would have saved you $100,000 and 3 months worth of rework when you do have 10,000 users. And so I think scalability, and I think thinking about that every day with every decision, it's hard, but I think that's what separates the winners from the losers is not a word I like to use, but it separates good from great. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting point of view, and I fully agree with that. Basically, especially coming from a tech side, the tech side of things, there's always this kind of trade-off, right, between making things scalable, thinking long-term, having all sorts of edge cases in mind versus over-engineering, like spending too much time on things that you maybe don't even need at all, or as many years in the future where you maybe then have even more resources and would do it in a different way anyway. So that's a very interesting thought process, especially since that developers usually struggle with over-engineering, getting back from a minimal product to actually a product that is able to scale, and also from the business perspective that you, as you mentioned, are able to replicate yourself, because you can't work 24 hours a day every day. That doesn't work. You need to sleep, to eat, and everything. So that's very interesting, and thank you for sharing that.
And I definitely, and it's a good point, right? Like, I think depending on what kind of founder I was talking to, if I'm talking to a developer, they do over engineer, and they do want to put every feature set. And so when you see developers creating companies, especially right now, right? Like they're developing for developers and they're not developing for their end user. That's also the key, which is, what do we need today? What do I need to bring a client on tomorrow? And what does that look like? And so managing a good roadmap and making sure that we are in 1.0 and 2.0, and let's leave that for 3.0. We only have so much money, but also evaluating those questions as you go and having someone that you can, who will give you really good feedback about that, who is your opposite. If two developers sit down and they're like, oh, we definitely need this feature, they will over engineer together. And so you do need advisory members on whether it's your advisory board or your board of directors, who are oppositional from who you are and how you create a company, that know your weaknesses, and you need to be aware of your own weaknesses as a founder and are you teachable too? And are there places where you should put your stake in the ground and say, no, I'm not willing to compromise on this? And what is the cost of that? And so just like there is no one right investor relationship, there's no one right answer when it comes to a roadmap either. And what do you develop and what do you not develop, and what sets us apart, and what's our unique feature to the market, and why are we different, and why us? And continuing to ask those questions, and knowing that you've got to be able to listen to people who have differing views from you, but also knowing what sets you apart, what matters to you as a founder, what your blind spots are. It's a dance. It's everything about building a business is just like building any relationship. It's, where are you willing to compromise? Where are you not willing to compromise? How badly do you want to raise money? How badly do you want to bring on a client? How well do you know your client? How much do you need to educate your client? How different is your client? I mean, like if you look at Apple versus Android, Apple knew who their clients were. They're not everybody's clients. That is for sure. And if they'd have developed Apple the way everything else was being developed at the time, they wouldn't be Apple. And they still are faced with that. Who's our client? Who are we making happy? And I think that's where, developers really, they love developing for developers, and they get in echo chambers. At least this is, and especially right now in blockchain and web3, because it's a new baby tech and we're so excited about it and what it can do. But who's the end user, and are you serious about them adopting it? Or do you just want to develop for your buddy so you guys can geek out about it? You're never going to raise money. You're never going to have end users, but it'll be really cool. It'll do all the things you want to do. And so we've got to move into that new space of, who is this for? And do you really want adoption? And if you do really want adoption, then you've got to be willing to give up some stuff on the front end and not overdevelop. And just go find your clients, build for them, talk to them, listen to them. And developers get really hung up on, well, but they should. Yes, I was a perfect example this morning of, yeah, my mom should have gotten all her stuff off the exchange, but she's 72. So did she? No. So today I was scrambling. And so I think we forget that even though this is an amazing tech, humans still have to use it. And humans are messy and unpredictable, and they act a certain way, and they're frustrating. And as a developer and as a business owner, that's the bane of our existence, but it's also how we make money. And so I think if there's one key takeaway that I want everybody to really get, it is, in order for us to progress blockchain and this tech that we love and are so passionate about, it's that we've got to think about our end user, and we have to stop making it complicated for them. Even though we know they should use it a certain way, they're not gonna. They're still Web 2 humans. As much as we want them to be Web 3 humans, they're just not. And so we've got to stop developing for developers. We have to develop for the rest of the world so that they'll come love our tech as much as we love it, because they're never going to see it. And that's how we move the needle of Web3 forward.
Wow. I think that was a really a perfect call to action, perfect ending for this incredible session. So what this all, basically the whole podcast triggers, or which quote I get in my head if I think about all the topics that we have just discussed today, then I would summarize it with make it as simple as it can be, but not simpler, as I think Albert Einstein used to say. So make it scalable, as you said, but also don't over-engineer, right? And I really love that. So, Jen, not sure if you want to add something, but otherwise I would say thank you for taking the time. I really learned a lot myself, and I hope the audience too. So I will drop all your links and everything you want me to drop into the video and podcast description. And yeah, let's stay in touch.
Perfect. This was fabulous. Thank you. I really enjoy getting to talk about this. So I appreciate the platform and your listeners, and thank you for the time. And I'm always around on LinkedIn or Twitter for people to reach out, and we love looking at really good projects and marrying them up with really great investors. So I'm always happy to move Web3 projects forward. It's my favorite thing because I'm passionate about this. So thank you for the time. Today was great.
Oh, well, I think you can expect a lot of new pitch decks.
Good. Yes. Send them to my inbox. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you again, and wish you a great evening or afternoon. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's afternoon here, so thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate it a lot.
Likewise. Thank you. Bye.
All right.
Wavect, the web-free software company that understands what you want.